Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The clerk slid our license back and tapped the red stamp. Application suspended, she read. External objection noted. My pulse spiked, a line formed behind us fast. I turned and saw her at the door, chin high. She had beaten us here again. I'm Eva, I'm 30. My first thought was simple and loud: fight back now. Mark touched my elbow, eyes asking for calm. I didn't step aside, I wanted the truth spoken. She waited, satisfied, like the trap had closed. Objection on what? I asked. Her purse snapped shut, her gaze never blinked. Prior divorce, she said, bad omen. Mark flinched, his jaw worked. The clerk stared at her note, uneasy. You called the county, I said. A tiny shrug, a smile that wasn't kind. I advised them of risk, she said. Risk of what? Mark asked, voice rough. Of losing you, she answered, pointed and cold. You cannot file objections, I said. Her palm lifted, a folded letter appeared. Character affidavit, she said, signed by family. Mark reached for it, hand shaking once. She pulled it back, quick as a smack. The clerk leaned closer. Take this outside, she urged. People murmured, the hallway buzzed like a warning. I held my breath and stepped toward the exit. She followed, heel sharp, rhythm steady. Trouble felt organized, not accidental. Outside, heat rose off the steps like pressure. Mark stood between us, shoulders tight. Mom, stop, he said, anger finally awake. Divorced is not diseased, I said. Her eyes flashed, then softened for half a breath. You will regret this wedding, she whispered. Regret already lives in me, I said, it taught me. Mark looked at me, then at her. He opened his mouth and closed it again. Silence hung like a dare. My phone buzzed hard in my pocket. Unknown number, short voicemail, no greeting. I played it on speaker for both of them. Venue received cancellation request, the voice said. Mother of groom confirmed. My chest heated, Mark's face drained white. You touched the venue, he said. She lifted her chin, no apology anywhere. Better a lost deposit than a ruined life, she said. I stepped closer until our shadows merged. Send me the contract copy you forged, I said. No forgery, she snapped, breath quick. My name opened doors, she added, almost proud. Mark braced a hand against the rail. Enough, he said, voice breaking on the word. A couple passing slowed, then hurried on. I drew a steady breath, then set terms. We marry with boundaries, I said, you stand with me. Or we pause, I added, I will not crawl. Mark stared at the license under glass. I waited for the first honest choice. She reached for his sleeve, knuckles pale. Think of yesterday, she urged, quiet and sharp. His eyes flicked to me, then down. What happened yesterday? I asked, heart beat high. He blinked hard, new fear pushing through. She called my old church, he said. Pastor refused to sign, he added, voice low. Her stare dared me to protest. If God says no, she said, why ignore it? A gust hit, hot and sudden, like an omen. God didn't call the venue, I said. God didn't stamp our file, I said. Mark rubbed his temple, breath coming shorter. He looked younger for a second, then older. I watched him decide who he was. The clerk peeked out and pointed at the clock. Last intake in 9 minutes, she warned. 9 minutes to marry or fold, clean and final. I swallowed and nodded like a fighter touching gloves. Mark saw it, and so did she. Walk in with me, I told him. We sign now, then we plan the rest. My voice shook, but my feet didn't move. Her eyes brimmed, fury and terror mixing hot. I braced for the next hit because it was coming. She reached into her bag and raised a photo. A woman stood with Mark, younger and tense. Engagement number 1, she said, saved him once. My stomach dropped, not from jealousy, from pattern. Mark stared like the ground had tilted again. Pattern ends here, I said. Or I end us here, I added, steady and clear. The clerk raised 2 fingers from the doorway. 5 minutes left, then the window closes. Mark wet his lips, then faced his mother. I'm going in, he said, voice flat and sure. Her breath hitched, then steadied like a last stand. You step through that door and I am gone, she warned. He looked at me, then at the stamp on the glass. He took 1 step forward, and the world leaned with him. I grabbed his wrist before he crossed the threshold. 2 minutes, I whispered, decide out loud, not later. He nodded once, eyes steady but raw. Behind us, footsteps gathered like a tide. We moved inside anyway, because hiding would rot us. The clerk lifted her brows at our return. "Window is closing," she warned, voice flat. I set the form down with both hands. "Process it now," I said. "We accept consequences." Her stamp hovered, uncertain in the charged air. His mother appeared at my shoulder without a sound. "Withdraw, or I call the board," she hissed. Mark's spine straightened as if a switch flipped. "No more threats," he told her, jaw locked. Her lips pressed thin like a door slamming. I slid a card across for payment and held firm. The clerk took it, eyes flicking between us. His mother's breath quickened, a storm pressed small. "Think carefully," she urged, voice low and sharp. Mark looked at me, then at the counter's edge. "Are we building or bleeding?" I asked, not blinking. "Building," he answered, voice clear through the static. That word steadied me like a brace. The stamp fell once and the paperwork moved. His mother's shoulders rose as if to strike. "Final notice," she warned, already dialing. Mark turned his back to her call. "We notify the venue ourselves," he said softly. "We own our date from here." I nodded, though my stomach twisted hard. The clerk slid a receipt with quick hands. "Pick up tomorrow," she said. "Bring identification." "Tomorrow works," I replied, forcing slow breath. His mother ended the call and faced us. "Your pastor refused again," she announced like a verdict. "Civil ceremony," Mark answered, not flinching. She blinked, surprised by the pivot. "You throw away blessing," she muttered, eyes burning. "Blessing is not blackmail," I answered, shoulders squared. Her mouth opened, then closed around silence. We stepped out of the steps and air hit. Mark leaned on the rail and exhaled hard. "Text the planner," I said. "Confirm we're alive." He pulled out his phone with stiff fingers. A new message lit the screen like a flare. "Vendor received legal inquiry," the text read. "Family member asked for contracts and penalties." I tasted metal at the back of my throat. "She's escalating," I said, keeping my voice even. He stared at the words as if they bled. "We meet them now," he said, pushing upright. "Face-to-face solves more than email." I agreed before fear found its script. He tapped a quick reply and pocketed his phone. His mother watched us, calculating the next angle. "Come if you listen," I told her without softness. "Or wait and watch from far." She studied me like I was a locked door. "Fair hearing," she said, "then I speak once." I let it stand because stalling would break momentum. In the car, my hands trembled against my knees. "Keep the line simple," I said, "no apologies." Mark nodded and flexed his fingers twice. "I protect you," he murmured, more promise than plan. I held his gaze, searching for daylight. The planner greeted us with tight composure. "Strange calls," she said, eyebrows lifting. "Today we sort boundaries," I told her plainly. Mark laid out the timeline without flourish. She listened, then placed a single document forward. "Add an authorized contact list," she suggested. "Vendors ignore anyone not listed." "Do it," Mark answered before I could speak. "Names?" she asked. "Yours and who else?" He wrote only 2, his hand unwavering. His mother stood apart, arms crossed hard. "Public ceremony invites wolves," she murmured. "Private chapel, quiet vows," then announced later. Mark glanced at me, waiting for my read. I felt the pull of safety and the price. "Private today," I said, "public when we hold ground." Her eyes flickered, half victory and half loss. "I attend if you follow counsel," she offered. "Counsel ends at respect," I countered, thumb tapping rhythm. She dipped her head, a concession edged with warning. The planner adjusted the schedule with crisp strokes. 2 witnesses required," she noted without drama. Mark looked to his mother, then back to me. "I bring my friend," he said. "You choose yours." I texted Mia with 3 blunt words and a pin. We walked out with a plan that felt earned. His mother lingered by the doorway, unreadable. "Remember, wounds do not vanish under rings," she said. "I remember," I answered. "That is why we build." She studied me for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch. Traffic hummed like an engine for our nerves. Mark's phone buzzed again with a clipped reply. "Mia's on her way," I said, letting breath flow. He gave a quick nod and tightened his grip. Then his mother stepped forward with a folded page. "Character affidavit," she repeated, offering it now. "Read before you gamble your future." I took it and skimmed, pulse drumming hard. Anonymous claims, vague slander, one line that cut deep. A date I recognized as the night I almost quit. Heat rose in my chest, not from shame. This is the last time you weaponize paper, I said. Mark looked at the page and then at her. Sign a boundary agreement or leave this process, he told her. Her jaw clenched as if holding back an earthquake. I will not sign away a mother's voice, she replied. Then keep your voice outside our choices, I answered. The planner returned with 2 clean forms. Authorized contacts and harassment clause, she explained simply. We both signed while his mother watched, rigid and pale. She turned for the exit without a farewell. At the door she paused, shoulders squared for war. Tomorrow I bring someone who will not bend, she warned. The click of the handle felt like a countdown. I pictured the pastor, or worse, a lawyer with teeth. Mark slid the documents into an envelope with care. We finished this together, he said, eyes unblinking. I believed him more than before, but not fully. Trust grows in motion, not in speeches. We walked out braced for morning, because morning would hit hard. He arrived flanked by 2 men before the office opened. One wore a collar, the other carried a slim briefcase. His mother stood between them like a general with flags. I felt my pulse climb and forced my shoulders loose. We keep this short, I said, voice steady on purpose. The planner unlocked the door and waved us inside. The collar cleared his throat and planted himself near the table. I cannot bless this union, he began, gaze set on Mark. Blessing isn't required for a civil oath, I answered. His eyelids flickered once, then he looked to her for cue. The briefcase clicked and a packet slid our way. Protective agreement, the lawyer announced with careful calm. Sign before any ceremony proceeds today, he continued without blink. Mark didn't touch it, he folded his arms and waited. I pulled it closer and scanned the first lines. If separation occurs, I forfeit assets and custody claims. If disagreements arise, her family controls mediation and venue choice. If public posts appear, financial penalties trigger without appeal. I kept reading until the pages blurred at the edges. At the bottom sat a signature line already bearing his mother's name. Not happening, I said, turning a page with 2 fingers. This is punishment disguised as prudence, I added, eyes on Mark. The lawyer adjusted his tie and tried a warmer tone. Think of this as certainty, he offered, palms open like peace. Certainty of control, I said, and pushed the packet back. The caller leaned forward and set a single card down. Counseling first, he urged, voice low but firm. 4 sessions, then we revisit vows, he continued slowly. Sessions can start today in my office, he added. His mother glanced at Mark with sudden wet eyes. Do you want weekly sermons or a life with me? I asked. He didn't flinch. Life with you, he answered without looking away. Her hands tightened around her bag and then eased. Then sign a boundary page I drafted yesterday, I said. The planner slid a clean form across before anyone stalled. No interference with employment or vendors, no surprise calls. No contact with my ex, no threats dressed as advice. Violations end invitations to anything wedding related, period. Mark took the pen and signed with a sharp stroke. He handed it to her and waited for her answer. She studied the sentences like they were traps. These cut me out of his future, she whispered, chin shaking. Only out of sabotage, I replied, letting the hurt show once. The caller watched her face and softened around the eyes. Love without control is still love, he murmured, barely above air. She set the pen down and slid the paper back. I cannot write my name under this, she said, voice brittle. Mark exhaled through his nose and straightened his shoulders. Then please step aside today, he told her, tone level. The lawyer snapped the briefcase closed like punctuation. She regrouped fast and tried a new angle. Witnesses must be trustworthy, she said, jaw stiff. I brought someone who knows her history, she continued, eyes on me. The door opened and a man stepped in with a folder. My lungs burned because I recognized his walk before his face. The investigator from my divorce hearing stopped 2 steps inside. He looked older and more tired around the mouth. We met once, he said, avoiding my stare, and Mark S. He opened the folder and lifted a photo toward the group. The date printed on it punched a bruise I thought healed. Context matters, he began, but I cut him off. Speak to facts only, I said, not rumors packaged pretty. He paused, then turned one page and set it flat. No fraud, no charges, one restraining order granted, he recited. Lifted after compliance, no further incidents, he closed the folder quietly. His mother blinked at the last sentence like it betrayed her. You promised me proof, she snapped, fingers digging her palm. He shrugged once. This is all that exists, he answered. Silence fell with weight I could name, relief and fury. Mark moved to stand beside me, shoulder brushing mine. The caller stepped back a pace, uncertainty cracking his poise. Truth changes counsel, he admitted, voice smaller than before. He gathered his card and gave a nod toward the door. I will not obstruct a lawful ceremony, he added, almost to himself. The lawyer looked to the mother and waited for orders. She pivoted to the only lever she still held. If you marry today, she warned, breath quick, I do not attend. A flash of grief rimmed her eyes, wild and clear. I felt a tug in my chest that wasn't pity. It was the cost of drawing lines and leaving them. Mark reached for the envelope with our documents. Then we proceed now, he said, voice even. He faced the planner. Slot us at noon, he requested. She checked the schedule and tapped an empty space. Done, she confirmed, 2 witnesses 10 minutes early. His mother didn't move, but the fight shifted. Last proposal, she tried, softer than I expected. Wait a week and sit with me privately, she offered. Mark looked to me for the call he had promised. I chose quickly because hesitation would swallow us. We meet for coffee after we register today, I said. No debates about theology, no contracts, no surprise guests. Her lips parted like a protest formed and died. Fine, she answered, voice flat as a board. 3 o'clock, 1 hour, then I stopped trying. The investigator exited without another glance. The caller followed with a nod that felt heavy. The lawyer lingered until she waved him off. She stood alone, proud and shaking and relentless. I braced because this quiet never lasted long. Mia burst in with wind and a fierce grin. Tell me where to stand, she said, throwing me a look. She clocked the faces and read the room fast. Perfect timing, I answered, and my spine lengthened. Mark's shoulders dropped a fraction as if air returned. We finalized the witness lines and the steps. The planner ran through the script in brisk beats. No speeches, no pauses, no open mic heroics. I felt the shape of our day settle into place. Then the front desk phone rang and the planner stiffened. She covered the receiver and looked straight at me. Caller claims to be county compliance, she announced, tone guarded. They request verification and ask to delay processing, she added slowly. My pulse thudded once, then steadied with intent. Ask for a callback number, I said, we will confirm. She scribbled it down and handed me the slip. I dialed with speaker on so everyone heard. A generic greeting answered with no name and no department. I hung up and smiled without mirth or doubt. She is still working angles, I said, and met her eyes. Enough games, Mark said, and took out his phone. He called the county main line and requested status. A clerk verified our file and cleared the flag. Pick up afternoon, the voice confirmed and clicked off. Her last card for the morning burned up in air. She turned toward the door and paused at the threshold. When the blessing fails, do not come home, she whispered. The sentence landed cold because it sounded like exile. I watched her leave and felt a door close somewhere. Then I realized the door was inside me, firm and locked. We stood breathing in that thin quiet for a beat. Mia bumped my shoulder and gave me courage with a nod. Mark laced our fingers and squeezed once for signal. Next stop the courthouse, he said, eyes level and clear. I nodded and let the fear drain into action. I pushed the courthouse door and walked straight to the line. A guard lifted a hand and scanned my face. Pick up file or file new, he asked. Pick up, I answered, pulse steady because I forced it. Behind me, the elevator dinged like a warning bell. Mark checked the time and squeezed my fingers once. Focus on the next step, he murmured near my ear. I nodded and counted breaths like stepping stones. The clerk window opened and a number flashed above us. We moved forward together while my stomach braced for impact. A woman slid a manila envelope under the glass. Sign here for release, she instructed, pen tapping twice. I wrote my name and felt the paper hum. Congratulations, she added, neutral but crisp enough to anchor me. I turned and saw his mother standing by the exit. She wasn't alone anymore, and my throat tightened hard. A man in a dark suit trailed her quiet steps. He held a thin folder and a deliberate expression. Mark's jaw flexed, then he rolled his shoulders loose. "Let's keep moving," I whispered, already expecting a collision. They intercepted us near the benches like a planned ambush. "Emergency motion," the man announced, voice smooth but metallic. "Temporary injunction regarding today's event," he continued without blinking. My eyes met his and didn't move an inch. "On what grounds?" I asked, heart banging in my ribs. "Risk to reputation and spiritual distress," he replied evenly. The absurdity landed, then anger sharpened my focus. "Not a legal basis," I said, keeping my tone clipped. He offered the folder for courtesy review, palms immaculate and still. Mark's breath shortened once, then settled into a controlled rhythm. I opened the folder and skimmed for real teeth. No judge signature, no case number, no service stamp. Just letterhead and threats arranged like puzzle pieces. I handed it back and held his gaze. "This is theater," I said, "we're late for noon." His mother stepped closer and raised a small black box. It clicked open to reveal a narrow silver band. "This belonged to his grandmother," she said, voice fragile but aimed. "Family tokens cannot be worn by strangers," she added slowly. Mark looked at the ring and then at me. "Your move," I told him, choosing straight over soft. He extended his hand and closed the box gently. "Keep it safe," he said, not looking away from me. Her mouth trembled and then flattened into resolve. The lawyer adjusted his cuff and watched for weakness. Security drifted closer with measured steps and patient faces. "Any trouble?" one asked, eyes taking in our cluster. "We're leaving for a ceremony," I answered, clear and steady. The guard nodded and shifted his stance by an inch. His mother lifted her chin like a final barricade. "Last warning," she breathed, almost pleading and almost threat. "You break this line today and I cannot forgive." The sentence hit deep because I heard something true. Not power, fear shaped like devotion that crushed instead of held. I chose anyway because some debts never end. We crossed the hallway together without looking back. Mia waited by the double doors and raised a hand. "Witness ready," she announced with a quick grin that steadied me. The staffer waved us into a small neutral room. My pulse slowed into a deliberate drum built for vows. He and I faced the officiant and signed the register. Our friend initialed the blanks with precise strokes. "I need 2 final statements," the official instructed calmly. I spoke mine without ornament or pause. He spoke his like a promise carved in bone. The doors opened mid-sentence and a shadow filled the frame. His mother stood there with both hands pressed together. "Please stop," she called, voice breaking at the last word. The officiant continued without flinching or looking up. I felt the room tilt, but I planted my feet. "Do you consent?" the official asked, eyes on me alone. "Yes," I answered, steady and loud enough to carry. "Do you consent?" he asked Mark, giving no one else oxygen. "Yes," Mark replied without a tremor or detour. "By the authority vested," the official concluded, pen poised over our names. Silence arrived like a stamp and then applause cracked. Mia whooped and grabbed my shoulders with laughing tears. Mark kissed my forehead, brief and certain and warm. The staffer smiled and handed us a certified copy. Outside the doorway, his mother swallowed whatever curse she carried. The lawyer stepped forward with visible restraint and lowered voice. "For record, my document lacks force," he acknowledged finally. He nodded once at me and then at Mark. Professional distance replaced the earlier performance and puffed threat. He left first, which meant the bluff had ended. She stayed rooted, eyes red and furious and wounded. "You traded your family for a stranger," she whispered at him. Mark reached out and touched her wrist with care. "No trade," he answered, "I grew a boundary." She flinched like the word cut more than any paper. I did not gloat because winning without repair curdles fast. "Coffee at 3, I reminded, giving her a bridge. "No contracts, no clergy, just us in air." She studied me for a long beat that felt dangerous. Then she nodded once, stiff and skeptical and alive. We stepped into the corridor with the certificate secured. Mia squeezed my hand twice like sending code. Mark exhaled and finally let his shoulders drop. "I promised action, not speeches," he murmured, almost smiling. I let myself breathe like a person not bracing. My phone vibrated with a fresh message marked urgent. Unknown sender, a screenshot, a wild accusation sent to my job. The subject line accused me of exploiting men for immigration. My lungs froze, then rage steadied my grip again. This just landed at HR, I said, showing the screen. Mark studied the screenshot, and his face hardened instantly. We go there now, he said, already clicking for a ride. Mia nodded and pulled up a second route. Coffee at 3 now felt like a trapdoor underfoot. I tucked the certificate deeper and prepared for round 2. I walked straight into HR with the screenshot open. This complaint targets my job, I said. I want a record. The manager glanced at the image and waved us inside. Mark closed the door with a firm push that sounded final. We sat as if we had trained for this moment. Who sent it? I asked, tapping the header once. Anonymous relay, the manager answered, eyes on the monitor. Origin masked, attachment scrubbed, she added with a frown. Give me the claims and I'll answer point by point. I steadied my breathing because control beats panic. She read the lines like they were sharp and dull. Marriage for immigration benefit, she began, voice even and slow. Prior pattern of deceit, threats toward men, harmful intent. Each sentence landed, then hit a wall inside me. Provide the full email headers, I said. I will trace. Mark leaned forward and set our certificate on the desk. Today we registered lawfully, he said, face still. We met requirements and cleared the county flag. The manager nodded once. The date matches your notice. Now I need to know if this continues tomorrow. Her phone buzzed and she stared at the screen. Second message just arrived, she reported, eyes narrowing hard. Same sender, new subject, warning to terminate immediately. Open on speaker, I said, already bracing my spine. We listened to a voice recording attach and then play. A woman spoke in a measured tone without names. She traps men with paperwork, the voice claimed, steady and cold. She used my son and will discard him soon. My hands went still, then I looked at Mark. He closed his eyes and let out one breath. Preserve that file, I said, chain of custody now. The manager saved it and flagged legal review fast. Do you recognize the speaker? She asked, searching our faces. Mark nodded once like it hurt and healed together. Notify your counsel, he added. We intend to respond. I pulled out my own phone and dialed Mia. We need timestamp proof of our location, I told her. Send the courthouse clip and the planner's schedule. She replied with 2 pings that hit like lifelines. I forwarded both to HR with a 1-line note. Here's our timeline, I said. No gaps exist. The manager scanned and then filed both under the case. This helps, she said. It paints motive and method. I nodded but did not relax even an inch. Next step is identification, I added, voice flat. Mark opened his messages and scrolled to a number. He dialed and put it on speaker without ceremony. County switchboard, a calm voice answered through static. Kindly confirm if you received a complaint about my spouse. No record, the voice replied. Your file is clear. The manager looked between us and the screen. Our policy protects employees against malicious reports, she explained. We can issue a cease letter by end of day. Send it to the address in the audio, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. You think she slipped a breadcrumb? She wants credit even while hiding, I answered. Mark rubbed his wrist and looked at the clock. Coffee at 3 stands, he said, jaw set. She asked for 1 hour, she will expect control. I felt a cold steadiness settle over my nerves. The manager printed a summary and slid it across. Sign acknowledgement and release me to counsel, she requested. I signed with a stroke that did not hesitate. We will keep you informed as actions unfold. I stood because sitting felt like surrender. We reached the street and met Mia at the curb. Recorder on, she said, tapping her pocket with a grin. Not for drama, for accuracy if things slip. Mark nodded and took my hand without words. We headed to the cafe where the clock would judge us. She was already there with a paper bag ready. Her eyes flicked to our fingers and then away. Talk quickly, she said. I have another meeting. Your voice reached my company today, I answered. Her mouth twitched like denial almost found shape. Play it, Mark instructed, turning the volume up. The recording filled the small space with chilled certainty. She stared at the tabletop as the last word ended. Do you deny this, voice? I asked, quiet and direct. Her throat moved once and then stilled like a held breath. I warned them to protect themselves, she replied slowly. That is not slander, that is care, she insisted. Care is not anonymous assaults, I countered, posture locked. Mark leaned forward, hands folded, eyes on her face. Enough strategy, I want the truth in daylight. She pulled the bag open and slid out a stack. Printed posts, old comments, cropped screenshots with red circles. Look at her pattern, she urged, pushing them toward us. I lifted the first page and saw my words excerpted. They were mine, then chopped and spliced into fables. You cut context to fit your fear, I told her. I cut noise to see warnings, she retorted, breath sharp. Your son deserves shelter from risky choices. He deserves partnership, Mark replied, voice low and firm. Shelter becomes a cage when the door never opens. She flinched and regrouped, then tried a new line. He already lost once, she threw, gaze steady on me. Your vows will snap when pressure returns. I reached into my wallet and placed the boundary form. Read what we signed today and understand the cost. She scanned the lines and pressed her lips tight. This language cuts me out, she murmured almost to herself. It cuts sabotage out, I answered, keeping my tone even. Mark watched her absorb each sentence like a verdict. She lifted her eyes and found me unblinking. I will agree if you swear to weekly counseling, she bargained. Not with your cleric, I answered, not giving her a foothold. Neutral therapist, licensed and accountable, no side channels. Mark nodded once like a gavel hitting a block. Write it and I will join the first session. She sat back and tested the new equilibrium in silence. Then her phone lit up and she glanced down fast. A message flashed and drained the little color left. Another email went out, she admitted, voice barely audible. To his aunt, it was scheduled, it fires in minutes. Cancel it now, I said, rising before I thought. She fumbled and tapped and shook her head once. It is sent, she whispered, eyes full of panic. Mark inhaled sharply and reached for his phone. Speaker, I said, because this had to be witnessed. Aunt Claire, he began, voice controlled like a blade. You will receive a message about my wife, he continued. It is false, disregard and call me after dinner. The pause stretched, then a calm answer arrived. I already got it, I will ignore and delete. I sat slowly and felt the fight shift under us. His mother stared at the tabletop and counted breaths. I built these alarms for months, she confessed finally. They fire if I hesitate, they run without me. A quiet horror ran through me like a cold wire. Turn them off, I said, words clipped to the bone. Every list, every relay, every ghost account today. She swallowed and nodded like climbing a steep hill. I will need the laptop at home, she answered. Then we go now and watch you dismantle it. Mia leaned closer and slid a small card across. Neutral mediator if you stall, she offered, eyes steady. Use it or the next stop is law, she warned. His mother tucked it into her bag without argument. We stood and the hour ended with air like static. On the sidewalk she reached for Mark and paused. I want to meet you again without her, she whispered. He stared at her hand and did not take it. Next time we meet together or not at all. She nodded once because the rule finally held. We rode in silence until the curb at her place. She unlocked the door and walked straight to the desk. A laptop woke and showed a web of automations. Names, triggers, timers, forwarders with dozens of targets. She hovered as if the map could bite her. Delete the templates, I instructed, pointing to the worst 3. She clicked and confirmed while her jaw trembled. Disable the triggers, Mark added, breath slow but iron. One by one, the switches flipped from armed to inert. The screen cleared and the room seemed to exhale. She opened a drawer and pulled a small envelope. This is the last letter I wrote, she said quietly. It never mailed, but it poisoned me daily. She tore it in 2 and then in 4. The pieces fell like old teeth hitting tile. I will apologize to your employer tonight, she continued. Written, signed, traceable, without excuses or spin. I watched her face and believed the shape of it. Not surrender, a hard turn made in blinding daylight. Copy me and send it before 9, I answered. Mark placed his palm on the desk and waited. Do you attend a simple dinner tomorrow? He asked. No speeches, no tests, just a meal and calm. She nodded slowly and looked smaller yet more present. I will come and I will listen without weapons. We left her at the door with the room still humming. Mia texted a thumbs up and a single word, progress. I leaned against the hallway wall and finally shook. Mark held my shoulders until the tremor passed enough. Then my phone buzzed again and the subject line crawled. I opened the new email and felt heat climb fast. Tip acknowledged, the subject read, clipped and smug. A form letter thanked the sender for reporting fraud. A ticket number blinked back like a loaded trap. It listed my job and our fresh marriage bolded. Not over, I told Mark, already dialing it. Trace the ticket link, I asked the tech on duty. He ran it while breathing into his mic like a sprinter. Anonymous portal, same IP as a recent message, he said. He read the digits and I memorized them like a threat. That server looks residential, Mia muttered, peering over my shoulder. Not her house, Mark said, eyes narrowing to a point. She mentioned a friend who never bends, I remembered aloud. We looked at each other and reached the same place. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. The address sat 5 blocks from her apartment. We knocked and heard a chain slide back once. A man peered through, then opened halfway for Mark. I spoke to your mother earlier, he offered, uneasy. We only borrowed a connection to send letters. Show the desktop, I asked, stepping inside with purpose. He stiffened, then moved toward a small table. The browser history spilled dates like a confession L. Innate. Automails, complaint portals, family CC lists armed by timers. My screenshot matched his logs with painful symmetry. She promised to stop, Mark told him, jaw tight. She locked these to fire without asking, the man replied. I thought I helped by keeping receipts, he added softly. I pointed to a task labeled tonight 9:15. A cluster aimed at my manager and her board. Cancel all, I said, prove it with a test. He deleted the batch and sent a clean notice. Automation disabled, the confirmation flashed across the screen. Mia recorded the steps with steady hands and sharp focus. I took a photo of the final log for proof. We left with time shrinking toward dinner like a fuse. Mark texted his mother that we were on our way. No response came back, only the delivered checkmark. My chest tightened, then settled into a stubborn calm. We turned the corner and saw her through the window. She stood when we entered, hands visible and still. A folded page rested near her water like a flag. I sent the apology, she began, voice low and plain. To your company and the aunt, she added, eyes up. I included my number and asked to verify. Good, I answered, easing into the chair without relaxing. One more step, Mark said, sliding his phone across. Call the man with the hotspot now, he added. She dialed, put it on speaker, and waited out ringing. Everything is off, he confirmed, sounding relieved and careful. Mia ordered fries and set the recorder between napkins. Ground rules hold, she said, tapping once for rhythm. No third parties, no surprise counsel, no midnight blasts. His mother nodded, then met my face directly. I can follow rules I did not make, she said. Then I ask for one more thing, I told her. Do not contact my ex in any format. She flinched and looked down for a long breath. I almost did this morning, she admitted, voice rough. I will not again, I will write that promise. Mark relaxed a notch and took her hand briefly. She let him, then reached for the folded page. This is for you, she said, sliding it to me. A written statement owning the emails and the calls. Permission from my employer to reach her directly for answers. I read it once more and pressed my thumbprint. Thank you, I said, and meant it without sugar. She watched me like measuring for cracks in light. Mia raised a brow and nodded at the clock. We still had 10 minutes before the scheduled blasts would have hit. My phone buzzed with a reply from HR. Apology received and logged, the message confirmed cleanly. Audio matched to the voice you provided. A second text followed from Aunt Claire's number. I accept her apology, dinner soon, no lectures. The server placed plates and retreated with good instincts. We ate a few bites because fuel matters in fights. His mother broke a piece of bread and stared at it. When I was alone, I learned to grip too hard, she said. She placed the bread down and opened her hands. I still need proof you two hold in storms, she added. We hold by telling the truth on time, I answered. We hold by not letting fear pick our moves. Mark slid his ring around his knuckle and looked at me. We hold by choosing again tomorrow, he said, steady as steel. She reached into her purse and set a small box down. The lid lifted to show the thin heirloom band. Wear it if you ever want it, she offered. Or keep your own and I will not judge. Her voice carried no bait, only effort and sweat. I closed the lid and left it between us. Not tonight, I told her, soft but firm. I will earn it from you and you from me. She breathed out like releasing a stubborn knot at last. Fair, she said, and folded her hands empty. Mia checked the time and shut the recorder off. No alarms fired, she reported with a grin. Your 9:15 died in that apartment. His mother looked ashamed, then grateful, then quiet. Silence settled that did not feel like retreat. We walked her to the curb and waited for a ride. She hugged Mark carefully and then turned to me. I will come to therapy if asked, she said. Neutral office, first available slot this week. I nodded and felt something shift that held. Her ride pulled up and she climbed in without drama. The window lowered halfway and she leaned toward us. I want to be a guest at your wedding, she said. Not a judge, a guest who claps when you kiss. The car rolled away before we answered with words. We stood under the open evening and breathed like athletes. Mia bumped my shoulder and gave me a crooked smile. You kept the line and still left a door, she said. Mark tucked my hand into his and squeezed twice. 2 squeezes had become our signal to move forward. At home, my inbox flashed with one last relic. A delayed post from a fake account snarled for attention. It died on arrival because the network removed it. A notice read, harassment policy enforced, account suspend. Dead. I stared until the screen dimmed and let my jaw unclench. Mark pulled me close and touched his forehead to mine. We survived the first siege, he whispered, breath warm and sure. Tomorrow we book the therapist and breathe on purpose. I pictured his mother in a waiting room with folded arms. I pictured us walking in together and not flinching. I opened the small fireproof box and set our certificate inside. No trophies, no speeches, just proof we chose and stayed. He locked it and placed the key in the dish. We stood quiet and listened for any stray alarms. The night held nothing but room for what comes next.